Welcome to another episode of the 90th Percentile Podcast. I'm Owen Hurd, joined by Ross Jensen, and this week we have our guest, Doc Eisenhauer of STS and Prospects Live. Follow him on X, Doc Eisenhauer, and he is the author of the weekly Sunday Smoke on Prospects Live. So go check that out like I do, even if you don't always agree with everything he says, like hyping up some future bench players we're going to talk about a little later on in this podcast. This week we'll be recapping some players we were wrong about in fantasy, as well as some first half surprises and dynasty buys and sells. So let's start off with some players who have surprised us. Doc, you want to start us off with your first player who has surprised you this year?
Yeah, and it's like someone who I was already big on and Ross wasn't. Man, Ross, that guy doesn't know ball. It's crazy. So, Mikel Garcia, we coming in hot. Mikel Garcia, I thought he'd be good. I just knew he had a great bat-to-ball skills, Stealing 37 bases last year is no joke, but the ratios were a joke. They were, especially OBP, it was 281 OBP, 237 average, not hurting you as much. He crushed some runs out. This year, I expected a regression to the mean. I guess an improvement to the mean, right? I figured, okay, we're going to see more like a 270 batting average, maybe 280, but still, I thought the OBP would be something like 310 max. Turns out he learned how to take a walk. He's only 25 years old. He's the cousin of Ronald Acuna Jr. A big frame on the guy. The thing is, it's not like we even have to talk about him growing into power either. He has power. It's like launch angles and whether or not he wants to try to aim for the fence every time. Right now, he's got a 300 plus batting average, I don't even know what it is, 370 or 380 OBP. It's absurd. I don't know how much that's going to hold, but it's starting to look like he's a star. Will he ever get to that 20 home run power to make him a superstar? I don't know, but 15 home runs, 30 plus stolen bases with elite ratios. Yeah, I'm surprised that this is happening so soon. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, no, I will say one thing that's really surprised me about Garcia is the power. He hit seven home runs last year in 626 plate appearances, so a full season of PAs. He's already at 8 this year with 358 plate appearances. So I think 15 home runs is very doable. The average EV is up nearly a mile per hour. Barrel rate almost doubled. Hard hit rate is up. So launch angles are also up too. So good call on Mikel Garcia going out. I know he's a guy you were pumping a lot. And yeah, I will say I saw kind of a contact first corner infield profile, which I don't love that from third baseman. For me, it's a premium position to where if there's not average-ish power there, I'm kind of less interested. But I think even if he's a 15 home run guy with his average, his speed, his on-base skills, this is a really good player for fantasy going forward.
Well, it's an interesting one because we were just talking about this before we got on that, I was like, well, I have a hard time with the guys that I've been wrong on, and not because I feel like I've not been wrong on people, but usually I feel like, well, we just have to give it time and then we'll see. I want to say that right now. I want to say, well, it's still early. You could be lucky for half a season. But I can't. I'll be honest. I just need Doc on all the podcasts to remind me of the guys that I'm wrong on, because I do think that this looks pretty. It looks pretty legit. It looks pretty sustainable. Yeah, I think this is just a player growing into his skill set.
Yeah. And my first one, and this is early on in the year, I was not really remotely interested, and that's Hunter Goodman. We know the power's been good, but he still has those approach issues. I was he was hitting I think 270 at the time with a low 70s zone contact. And I'm this average is not going to hold. He will still hit for power, but he's going to strike out a ton. But he's been somebody that I've been very wrong about. The swinging strike rate is still high, but zone contact at just over 83%, overall contact to 70% is fine from a guy who can hit you 30 home runs. Still chases a good bit as well, but he's also become kind of the anti-Rockies hitter in a lot of ways. He has very good splits even away from Coors Field too. So Hunter Goodman is, he's somebody, I will take that on the chin. I was very wrong about him going into the season and kind of early on.
I expect we will see some regression, but yeah, the power is legit. I think we know that. So I think you're probably looking more at a 250 hitter than a 280 guy, 240, 250 maybe. But with that power, he can stick.
Yeah, absolutely. Any thoughts on Hunter Goodman, Doc?
Yeah, I'm thinking of I think it's a big mirage. I'm rooting for the kid. I root for all these guys. They're trying to make a career. He's a good old boy from the South, He's just swinging out there. His metrics suck. The important ones, the ones that say, hey, try not to strike out and try to take a walk. He's not doing either. He's striking out, and he's not taking walks. I don't know how long he can pull this off for. But it's a good story, so keep it rolling, I guess.
Yeah. And Ross, you want to get into your first two surprised you?
Yeah, so the first one I think is pretty obvious. I put Cal Raleigh on there, and not because I didn't think he was decent before. It's just I don't think anyone could have anticipated him halfway through the season having 35 bombs, challenging, as we were saying, Judge for potentially the MVP, also for the home run crown. He's currently leading that, so it's just a wild season. Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. Like what we were talking about earlier is like, for me, Raleigh coming into the year was like, I feel like we had seen kind of the player that he was. It's like, he will hit you 30 home runs, but he is not going to be a plus contributor in, average or, on base percentage. And I think now we're kind of, this is almost like a kind of very completely different Kyle Raleigh than we've seen in the past. Like, he's hitting 271, getting on base at nearly a 380 clip. Truly a historic season for a catcher. I mean, looking at him last year, like, still striking out a lot, like not really hitting for average, not really getting on base a ton. This year, hitting a lot better, taking walks more, striking out less. Yeah, no, the contact is also up slightly. The swing strike rate is also slightly down. The chase rate is down. Like we were kind of talking about, I think he's still kind of an opportunistic sell, because I don't think there's anybody who is untouchable for Cal Raleigh right now. We were talking about kind of earlier before we started recording that, can you trade him 1-for-1 for maybe a Cole Reagans or a Logan Gilbert? And I think at this point, genuinely, I think you can.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if not even, maybe even a little bit more, and I would do that deal for sure. So I'm with you guys. I mean, do either of you think that there's any chance he can replicate this kind of performance, not even the same level, just somewhat close, in future years? Like 40, 50 home runs.
I mean, I got to ask the question, because right now he's on pace for 50 home runs. Frankly, if he doesn't hit 40, it's a shocker.
I think at last I saw he's on pace for 63, 64. So that would break the single season home run record of the non-steroid era if he does keep this pace.
This could happen, but I guess I'll ask both of you. Do you think, I don't think he finishes with an OBP over 350. I don't think he finishes with more than 45 home runs, which is it sounds crazy to say. I think there's cold times coming ahead for Cal Raleigh.
Yeah, I mean,
I think he'll finish over 45 home runs, but
it's a tough one.
I think you might be on the money about the OBP. I expect there to be regression coming.
Yeah, I'm kind of split on this, because like we've talked about how demanding a position catcher can be, but there's still 76 games left in the season. He's already hit his career high in home runs. I think if we're talking, can he hit 10 home runs in 76 more games? I think that may be even a conservative estimate. So,
but if in July, 3 in August, 3 in September, that's only 9. Like, that's still fine. He's still a power bat, but
yeah. I see where you're coming from there, but one thing we didn't really talk about with Raleigh, like, he's running a average EV over 92 miles per hour, 24.3 degree launch angle, 18.9% barrel rate, near 50% hard hit rate. Like, I don't like, I would not, like, even with how demanding of a position catcher could be, I would not rule out 50 home runs for Cal.
I think we'll see 50 home runs, which I think would be a record for catchers.
Yeah, I think you're right on that.
Which is incredible. I mean, amazing. I think he's going to have a season for the ages as far as catchers go.
Yeah.
But I would be selling. I would be selling for sure if I was an owner right now.
I'm shocked his walk rate's actually been this high for the last couple of years. So the OBP thing, 350 might honestly he just whiffs and strikes out and chase. He just, like, that's all not great, but it's kind of like the Kyle Stowers thing, except on steroids. Not literally. Hey, we don't know, but probably not on steroids. But Kyle Stowers, the reason, like, I'm not just throwing him out with those other guys who are just hacking slashers, getting lucky or getting on a hot streak. He can take a walk, and honestly, I never knew that Cal Raleigh took walks like this. I actually am starting to look at his last 2 years, 306 and 312 OBPs. I think those years were actually bad luck. So, dang, yeah, he's probably gonna. This is a serious guy. I'm sorry, Cal Raleigh. I was not familiar with your game.
Yeah, and I think, like, we were talking earlier just about, like, what his dynasty value is right now. I had somebody on X ask me about him the other day, and he was telling me that he got offered. It was definitely these four. I'm kind of blanking on the other names, but it was Yuri Perez, Jason Dominguez, Leo DeVries, is one of Mahe or Pena, and there were a couple others in there, and I'm like, smash accept on that. And so I think
Yeah.
I think even if Cal Raleigh comes close to what we think he can finish with this season, next year, going forward, I think really just his value is at an all-time high right now. And I think as an owner, I have a couple shares as well. Like, you would be foolish not to.
I mean, I would be looking to sell right now, as opportunistic as I am in Dynasty anyway. For a title, maybe it's a different story. You ride it out and then you trade him in the offseason. Perhaps. I don't know, but I'd be looking to move him to take advantage. I do think this is going to be a career year for him. And I'm looking at some of his stats on, just on the season. Like, in some ways, it's like, okay, there's no way he's going to be able to do that again. In other ways, it's kind of like, well, he's only running at 269 BABIP right now. That's pretty low, actually. It's kind of in line with his career numbers, it looks like. So it's not like something he is probably going to far exceed. But for a power hitter, like, that strikes me as oddly low. So you could actually, in a normal person's profile, I don't think it's going to happen with Raleigh, but you could see the same guy having a career year like this, hitting 300, 310, 320,
Want to hear something crazy? He's like never squared up rate's awful. Folks at home, squared up rate is how much exit velocity was obtained compared to the maximum potential exit velocity to be available, given the speed of the swing and the pitch. This guy's like at 10%. Like, he's basically not maximizing his power in theory ever. Like, the last 3 years are all, like, his whole career is like nothing. And he's still like that. When I first saw that, I thought there's like, oh wow, what happens if you start squaring it up? But no, I don't know. This is something, I think this is one of those situations where you have a guy breaking metrics, because I think we're getting the velo we're going to get. I don't think there's an 80 home run bat in here.
I agree. And Doc, the next one you have a kind of a breakout kind of Cardinals pitcher who I think was closer to off fantasy radars entirely than kind of what we've seen so far. So you want to get into your next surprise this year?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give a 15-second shout out to Kyle Stowers, and that I heard you guys talking about him when my internet wasn't working, and I wish I was able to talk about him. But yeah, he's such a weird guy, because Kyle Stowers was the redheaded stepchild of the Orioles prospects. Remember, they had that heyday where everyone was going to be a superstar? Nobody was really thinking about Kyle Stowers. He was like that fun, the tall blonde. He looked great. Put him out there, maybe he'll get like a 160 average with 20 home runs.
We're picking up on this guy at STS a little bit. Probably the only people in town, that were really talking about Stowers when he was coming up. But we had honed in on him. He was a top 30 outfield prospect for us.
Yeah, so that's that. And we hit another home run tonight. But Matthew Liberatore was the man we're talking about here. And I will say that he's got it all. I mean, he's got 6'5", 230. He doesn't stand in front of me right now. I should probably pull him up. But he's a prototype kind of build. And he was a elite prospect. I actually never really had him anywhere. I never, and then he was bad. He was they put him in the bullpen. We're thinking, I guess he's a bullpen arm without electric stuff. How's that going to work? But turns out he's still 25 years old, and we have to have some patience. And this is maybe a learning lesson. We talk about this a lot on Dynasty Dingers. Gosh, the plight of the prep arm. Sometimes they're Travis Sikora or Thomas White. A lot of the times, it takes a while. A lot of the times they have TJ. A lot of the times it takes a while. And so 25, 26, 27, you're talking about that's the breakout for a pitcher, or when they start logging serious innings at least. Matthew Liberatore, I see him out there, I'm using my eyes scouting this guy. He's calm, cool, collected. I like him on the mound. He looks strong. I mean, you're looking at a Cubs team who they eviscerated Miles Michaelis. They turned Miles Michaelis. He might as well have been Saddam Hussein. The way you see him talked about on X right now, Cardinals fans want him executed in public.
I think that's been a couple of years now, if we're being honest, though.
He's on a hot stretch. I was riding him out. I cut him right before that game because I'm like, yeah, Bruce Olson's coming back. I feel like the magic's going to run out. It ran out. But Miles Michaelis, he's okay here and there, but when he blows up, he blows up. And obviously the Cubs were hot, They came in there, they wrecked him. Fetty just got wrecked. These are not the best pitchers in the world, but for Liberatore to come out there against an extremely confident Cubs lineup in Wrigley, and, he didn't have the best game today. I put his name on here before today's game because I was confident about him. That's how I feel strutting him out into fantasy lineups these days. He's a walking quality start. And guess what? I would actually warn everyone about this. I am big on Lib. This is like we're approaching max innings for him. Like he's never really like he hasn't had as many innings as he's headed for. So watch out for that if you're competing right now or in redraft leagues. Other than that, I think long term, he's looking like a guy who's got a deep arsenal. When he's on, he's on. I mean, it's like a couple games ago, he had his max spin rate for the season. His curveball was filthy. It's like 6 pitches here. You have a real guy. Maybe he's not 14 strikeouts every, you're not going to see these crazy strikeout games, but I think he's going to be not, it's not Quinn Matthews. We thought it was going to be him. It's not going to be Sonny Gray much longer. I think Matthew Liberatore is the Cardinals' ace for the next, foreseeable future.
What's your guys' impression of the Cardinal defense in general?
Okay, I'll tell you, it's pretty good. And that's the thing that the Cardinals are playing to. They're like, yeah, just pitch to contact. That's been something that's been debated about Quinn Matthews is some people are saying they're trying to basically lessen his filth by having him pitch in the zone more, just hey, let them have the bad contact. That's how Michaelis has had a career. That's how, and he was an all-star in 2022, it's crazy. But you got a guy like Liberatore who he's just got 6 pitches. He's putting them in the right places. He's allowing bad contact. Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily a glitch. I think it's a feature. Something you got to think about, like the A's bats. I find myself saying are these guys? Is Kurtz really that? Is he gonna hit that many home runs? And I'm like, gosh, you know what? It's a feature, not a glitch. He's not going anywhere, Sacramento or Vegas.
Yeah, I think while we're on the subject too is that infield, or especially that left side with Arenado, Wynn, and Donovan. That's 3 Gold Glovers at third, short, and second. That can do wonders for a pitcher. Even those kind of pitch to contact pitchers, like we were talking with Liberatore, he's not a big strikeout guy. 7.4 Ks per 9, a really elite command, just 1.6 walks per 9. So I think for fantasy, it's kind of very format dependent. I'm less interested in this kind of profile on points because I think this is kind of a mid to high 3s ERA, not great whip with pretty low Ks. But like you were talking about, he will give you quality starts. The defensive infield is really good. The FIP is actually even better than the ERA right now, 3.05 FIP versus a 3.7 ERA. So I think I wouldn't say this is the ace of the Cardinals rotation. I wouldn't say this is an ace for fantasy, but I think this is somebody going forward. I would be perfectly fine having Matthew Liberatore as the starting pitcher 3 on my teams.
Sure.
Well, I think you were kind of honing in on the reason why I was asking that question is because he's very consistently performed worse than his fits throughout his career. So it's just a thing with him. I was trying to, deduct whether or not there was any room for further improvement based on that. It just doesn't look like there is because that's how it always is with him. Just an interesting thing. So I was like, well, that made me immediately start thinking about, well, what's the defense like, And
yeah, I will say this is a profile that in a lot of pitchers, I'm a little bit hesitant on. The fastball from a velo standpoint, not that impressive. Low.
He gets 96. I've seen him do it pretty regularly.
Well, yeah. I mean, if we're talking average, we're talking a little over 94. Not really a ton of whiffs with that pitch. It gets hit hard. Opponents are hitting 308 against it. Slugging 449, 338. Weighted OBA, it's okay from a whiff standpoint, 15.2, but it's getting hit hard too. 91.7 average EV against it. So I think when these kind of secondary heavy profiles, I'm a little bit kind of optimistic about, or no, not optimistic, a little skeptical about. But I think with Liberatore, it's interesting because when you look at somebody when they have elite command and they can locate their pitches really well, it's kind of okay, I'm a little less concerned as I would be with this profile if, say, it was 3.8 to 4 walks per 9.
Yeah. And just without going on too much more about him, when you see that slider, when you see that curveball, when he's it's interesting. I've seen him, and when he's hitting the zone, oh my goodness, he's just painting. So beautiful seeing those off speeds coming in there. But even when it's off by just a few inches, he starts putting himself in some bad counts, and I'm like, Libby doesn't have it today, and you're right in that you can't just get by with that fastball. You will not survive on the fastball alone.
Yeah. And for my second player, he's really having a weird season because going in, I had completely written him off, washed, very close to a DFA candidate for me. And now, like, he's having an all-star caliber campaign, and that's George Springer. And I think, like, especially under the hood, looking at just the differences from 2024 to 2025, you don't expect guys to have like this level of drastic changes in their age 35 season. But he's walking even more, chasing less. His sweet spot is elite. His barrel rate's elite. His X slug, XBA, expected weight to OBA, all elite, all significant improvements over last year. Like, this is, I going in, like, this was kind of immediately like, I'm thinking sell high. Like, I'm not buying this. Like, he's 35. Like, last year was really not all that impressive. He's still running a 64th percentile sprint speed too. So, like, George Springer is definitely one who's really surprised me this year. Is this may be like a 25 plus home run, 270, 280 hitter with 15 stolen bases, and there's fantasy value in that for sure. So George Springer is definitely one who's also surprised me a ton this year, and just he looks like a completely different player.
There might be a little baseball wistfulness or nostalgia in this, but me and my buddies always used to talk about players near the end of their career, and they kind of have like a resurgent season, where it looks like they're tapering down, they're just about done, and then all of a sudden, kind of out of nowhere, they put it all together for one more great year for the love of the game sort of stuff, and that's what I see right here. Like, that's where my mind goes, at least, and that's why I'm saying I don't know if that's real or if that's just me, like, wanting something like that to happen. But yeah, I mean, I just look at this and it's like, you're right. He was trending the wrong way, kind of the tail end of his career. Here it is. He's back. He's back at least for a year. We'll see where he goes from here. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect too much more out of Springer.
Yeah.
Really, he's going to be 36 here pretty soon. So this might be it. Maybe you get another solid season out of him, but
yeah,
it's a good one.
I think this is like, I'm taking this opportunity to sell Springer in Dynasty right now. Like, he's crushing fastballs, which he wasn't doing last year, but he's whiffing over 38% of the time against breaking balls. That's up 8% from the previous year. Still not hitting off speed well at all, hitting it a lot worse for average and power than he was last year too. So I think, like, I'm taking this as a sell opportunity on Springer, but I don't really think that takes anything away from just kind of the season he's had so far, and kind of going from somebody who was probably, safe to say at best, drafted for a bench slot / not drafted in a 3 outfielder league. Like, this is maybe a 4th or 5th outfielder going into the year in terms of his draft cost. And I think, like, with the type of production he's on pace on and just what he's showing so far, this is somebody, like, I'm somebody I prefer to wait on outfield a little bit. It's a deeper position. I wouldn't have any problem with this, with his production so far, as my first or second outfield.
Agreed.
Yeah. No, I'll just say that, basically echoing what y'all are saying. It's weird. It's almost, this just looks like what Springer was doing in his prime. So is this a question? And I don't know the answer to it. Is this, he's healthy again and he's given us a year or two more of this? Or is it it's a morbid term, but is it a dead cat bounce?
And Ross, you got one more for players who surprised us you want to get into.
All right, I'm going with Byron Buxton. And we always knew the talent was there. In fact, he's not playing all that different than he did last year and many other years in the past, but he's healthy. And that is worth pointing out. That's worth noting. It's been a tumultuous young run through the first half of his career. Can't stay on the field. So far, he has managed to do that. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. I think, and with Buxton, like, I think, when all is said and done, this could be in the running for the best season of his career. But, he's played 140 games once. So I think, like, a part of me is, like, kind of like in the middle on this, because, Jacob deGrom, who we'll talk about a little later on, he was someone that, like, I was out on at costs. Like, he has not stayed healthy. This is not the kind of workload I want from, like, a starter on my fantasy team. But with Buxton, do you think that, we've kind of seen that, this is somebody who will be lucky to play 100 games in a season? Or do you think that, maybe we're kind of starting to finally put those health issues behind him?
I mean, there's too much of a track record of not being able to stay on the field that I'm not buying that. But I mean, I would love to see it. I just think even if we do get it, if we get another 140 games out of him, I wouldn't count on that for next year again.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like, it's just, especially with what this is going to vault his cost into next year. I think, like, should he go 100 plus games this year, I think you're looking at, I don't think it's crazy that you're looking at a top 80, top 90 overall pick in fantasy drafts for next season. And I think just with the durability questions we've seen, that's just not really a price I want to take that shot.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if he stays healthy, fellas. I mean, and even when he's been healthy in the past, especially in OBP leagues, he actually hasn't been that good. So again, this could be a career year, or this could just be a June memory.
No,
I mean, I don't know. I'm looking at a 31-year-old who, throughout his career, is just under 30 wins above replacement for his career. That's not that bad. That's pretty decent career, especially for a guy that
for his career.
I mean, well, Doc, I see where you're coming from with like with the OBP. Like we've only seen him above a 340 OBP once. That was 2021. But I don't really think you can ignore just the value he has in points and cats, especially with being able to hit for power, being able to run, hit for a solid average. Not a great OBP, but not a terrible OBP either. I think Buxton. My issue with Buxton at cost is not from a talent perspective. It's from what are you getting out of him.
Yeah, I mean his career average in OBP is 247, 307. It's like, yeah, I mean, what does he do? What does he not do? Get on base. And so it's just not my profile.
Granted, I think a lot of that has kind of swayed with his rookie year, 250 OBP, and then 2018 where he played 28 games and had a 183 OBP. Outside of that, couple where the OBP hasn't been good, but you're looking at 5 seasons where it's a tolerable OBP. So I think really kind of the OBP part is I still think there's really good fantasy value there, even in OBP leagues with a guy who can hit for power, run.
Amount of seasons more than 19 home runs, 1. Amount of seasons more than 15 stolen bases, 1. These were actually quite a while ago. So it's like, hey, I'm rooting for the guys. It's better for baseball if I'm wrong. But
this is the best. No. I mean, I don't think anyone is in disagreement with you here. You can't stay on the field. I mean, we're all saying that. But like Jacob deGrom, and I don't want to belabor this too much, but like Jacob deGrom, if you've properly planned for that, he can still be an advantage to you, right? If you've got 4 or 5 outfielders and you just expect that they're going to be injured, like a Jacob deGrom complementing your rotation instead of you building around him, then that's an extremely valuable player in that kind of a situation.
I think it's a little different because with deGrom, you're looking at a guy who is drafted in starting pitcher 1 territory. You're not really with Buxton. I feel like it's a little different because with Buxton, going into this year, you were looking at a guy who's, maybe 9th to 11th pick. So you can build that kind of core around and, with Buxton, take that shot. If he's healthy, great. If not, you still have, the core of your roster, the core of your lineup. You've got some players on your bench for that. With deGrom, my problem with deGrom was, when I'm drafting my first starting pitcher off the board, I want a guy who's going to go 160 plus innings. deGrom going into this year, I didn't see that from him. So I think it's a little different from a cost perspective because with Buxton, I think the upside it's a lot different taking that kind of risk, and I think Buxton was I want to say the 150 range ADP, and deGrom was a top 50 overall pick. So I think there's a little bit from a risk level, deGrom was the higher risk. Buxton, you can still kind of have a contingency there. But yeah, I kind of see where you're coming from where it's if you do draft one of those guys, hypothetically deGrom, you're going to want to stack on bench starting pitchers. If you draft Buxton, you are going to want to have an outfielder or 2 on your bench. In that case, he is going to miss extended periods of time.
So I think this is a really good transition right into our players we were wrong about, because I want to talk about deGrom a little bit, but I don't want to keep us on the same topic here. And you had Jacob deGrom listed as a player you felt you were wrong about. So let me just continue the Jacob deGrom conversation just briefly. Jordan Rosenblum sent out a tweet, and this was a few years ago when deGrom was a little bit younger, and he's having a really good year, but he was dominant. Dominant, just perpetually hurt. The analysis he sent out there, this was really interesting to me, and it reframed the way that I view players and pitchers in particular, but it said the amount of starts that it takes from any other starter to equal 1 Jacob deGrom start, and the next closest guy was 1.9 starts. So I mean, if you take that to the natural extreme, basically what that's saying is you could have half a season from Jacob deGrom and it's as good as a full season from anyone else. Now, when you lose him, your team is at a terrible place, right? But think about this from like a roto perspective. If you're doing roto, like you've gotten a full season out of him, out of that half amount, and now you just got to go find a replacement. And his argument that he made was the only reason you would not want DeGrom on your team is if you're terrible at finding replacements. He's like, I feel like I'm confident in finding a good replacement, so why would I not take the guy that's worth twice as much as any other guy when he actually pitches every single time?
Yeah. Like, I agree with that to an extent. Like, I would have less issue taking DeGrom in a 10 or 12 man league than I would, a 16 or 18 team plus league. You're talking about a big difference in quality of starting pitchers on the wire when you look at kind of those shallower formats and then you get into those medium, deeper formats. When we were doing our 30 man drafts, I would not touch DeGrom. That's just not for me. When you have essentially no quality MLB starting pitcher depth on the wire, there's been a few pop-ups this year, Adrian Hauser, Brandon Walter, but I am not confident in a league that size drafting DeGrom as my one and being able to replace him. And I would agree with like the premise where if you get a half season of DeGrom, you are getting better than a lot of other starting pitchers a few years ago. But I think now, like, we're looking at, a sub 9K per nine, which he hasn't pitched to since 2016. He's over 100 innings pitched, which is great to see. First time since 2019 he's done that. But I think, like, looking at DeGrom from a points league perspective, I don't think DeGrom is the same starter that he was a few years ago, from a fantasy perspective.
Well, I'm totally there. I was, basically thinking the same thing with Buxton in terms of roto versus head to head. With these injury prone guys, listen, injuries are going to happen and it sucks. I mean, in my home league, gosh, if my internet worked, I'd reel, maybe off memory, maybe off trauma, I'll reel them off to you. Steele, Pablo Lopez, Cole Reagans, Chris Sale. Now here we are. Ryan Weathers, the chosen one who can never be. That's the ultimate. Anyway, they're going to happen, these injuries. But there's certain guys out there, and hopefully Weathers going to avoid this guy because he's becoming one of those guys. But, I need you in my lineup in a head-to-head format. I'm a head-to-head guy. Roto, there's the argument, and it's a logical argument that, it's the best of the best. It's the whole season. It's the most commit. It's like, bro, head-to-head's more fun, and if you don't like it, you're wrong because it's my opinion. But yeah, no, head to head. So if you're in a head to head format, folks, a lot of people out there are in those formats. You're rolling the dice that your heroes are going to be there when you need them most, when you need them in the third act.
Yeah. And that kind of gets me kind of into my second one too, just staying on the injury topic. And that was Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray was another one. Like, I'm kind of kicking myself for this because at cost, a not far removed Cy Young winner at like, I think it was like pick 160 or something like that. My ick wasn't so much with Ray, more just the other starters in that range. I like Christopher Sanchez a lot more going around that same range. Robbie Ray has been great. I think he's, like not kind of the same level of strikeouts we've seen in the past. He owns a 2.6 ERA, 3.45 FIP. He's made 18 starts, over 100 innings pitched. The command is solid. That kick change is just disgusting. So he's another guy, like, just given kind of the limited sample over the past 2 seasons and kind of the other, like, kind of young rising starters in that range, I was like, I would be interested in maybe 30, 40 picks later, not really from my starting pitcher 3, but he's proved me wrong in a big way. So I think, I think like what we were talking about earlier is just sometimes just, stomaching the risk on those kind of, injury guys. And, there's cases where it'll backfire too, like with Sandy Alcantara is a good example kind of going into this year. He's been better as of late, but those first 10 to 12 starts were ugly. And, Felix Bautista is another one where, like, now looking back now, but it kind of took him until June to kind of look like the kind of elite closer that he was before he went down with Tommy John. So I think, like, with pitchers, it's, with something like Tommy John, there's very unpredictable kind of comeback record when it comes to that, at least kind of originally. And so those guys I kind of have a tough time with. Robbie Ray has been one of those where, you still kind of like he's coming off Tommy John. Is he going to be that same guy? I didn't think so, but he's looked a lot like his old self. So he's been a very pleasant surprise for me this season.
I mean, you talk about a lack of optimal strikeout rates, and then you talk about the lack of success coming back from Tommy John from some other pitchers. It's like, bro, we'll take it. We'll take your 2 ERA. We'll take this underrated level of success. No, I think that's a great name to bring around. Robbie Ray. I feel like no one's really given the kid. That's crazy. Robbie Ray's younger than me. Gosh darn, I'm getting old. But Robbie Ray. It's crazy because I look like a Zoomer right now. I did not choose this haircut. Went to like this Vietnamese barber shop. Big mistake. They give you a nice like rub down, the rub down up here. Anyway, but the haircut was awful. Point is, this isn't Dynasty Dingers, folks. We won't go any further than that. I'm happily married, and Robbie Ray is a stellar pitcher.
I agree. I'm talking more just like, this year, like I was kind of in on a couple like, kind of post Tommy John guys that I probably shouldn't have been at cost. And I feel like I kind of learned my lesson with that. And Ray has kind of been like that kind of one exception where, even like with, even guys who are just a little bit more removed, like he made 7 starts late last year. I think there's a big difference between those guys who they do kind of, will pitch late into a season and, or have kind of put it behind them going into the other than those guys where, they're going to be back at the beginning of that season, but they haven't pitched for a year.
Yeah. I bought low on Robbie Ray going 2 years ago. So I'm enjoying the fruits of that.
It's a nice dip. Kyle Bradish is at a dip right now, by the way. No one in a month from now, everyone's going to be talking about him, assuming no setbacks. But there's a little dip. Like people talking about Alejandro Rosario. As soon as he got the TJ, people were, Owen, sorry, I actually just had a flashback. I know that you were one of these guys. It happens to everyone. The whole industry, they don't want to let go of that value right away. About 5 months from now, Alejandro Rosario will be so yesterday's news. He'll be the next Owen Murphy where you can buy back in because they're talented people, talented players. But goodness, there's just a weird vortex TJ Arms will slip into after. Because guess what? There's always another player who's about to shine, take their spot.
The difference between Alejandro Rosario and someone like Owen Murphy is Rosario was a much more established pitching prospect when he did get the Tommy John. Like we're talking about a guy.
I like them both. Saying.
Yeah. Oh no, I do too. I'm saying like we're looking at a guy like Murphy. He's pitching great in high A, and then Rosario, who on the verge of a promotion to AAA, like could have been in the majors this year. He has 3+ pitches. Like he's somebody even with the Tommy John. Like he's not going to fall off my top.
Sure.
And then Ross, I've got a couple Marlins here for your kind of players you're wrong about. One prospect from, I guess what we call it, a disappointing bloodline so far, and then another one that they acquired at the trade deadline last season.
It is interesting because I've been following that trend as well, because it's like you had Jose Salas come up and, he gained a lot of like prospect stock and then he kind of fell off. You got Ethan Salas doing the same thing, and Andrew Salas for me in a much shorter, quicker time frame is kind of following the same trend.
Something in the genes. Like, I'm sorry to say this, but if Ethan Salas was not elite defensively, he would be a lot closer to non-prospect than top 100.
I still think there's possibly a good prospect there. I think we got a little cheated this year because he's been out, and it would have been interesting to see because this is a make or break season for him. But Andrew Salas, it's not make or break for him. He's got plenty of time. 17 years old in single A, which is very aggressive. But he was starting out super hot. I got real excited, and I probably got too excited, and I overranked him in my first top 100 update. And I know I kind of cheated putting a prospect on here, but I'm never wrong about players, so said I'm just joking. We got Michael Garcia. Okay. So I had to eat some crow on that and drop him.
Yeah. And then your second Marlin that you're getting.
I just want to say
it takes on the Marlins, Ross. What did the Marlins do to you?
I want to take some man. It takes a man to eat crow. I got some crow to eat. It's coming up.
Yeah, so my next guy on here is Graham Pauley. I just don't really know what happened here. I thought we had a pretty good-looking prospect on the rise, and I think it was just before he came up back to 2023. I was really looking into this profile very closely, and I was like, there's a lot to be pretty excited about here. I actually think this is a guy on the move up, and like he's ready to take that next step, and then it's been straight down since. I still roster him in a league, and that's been a source of frustration. He's now back down in AAA, I believe, unless you got the call back up. I can't remember if you did or not, but he's been all right. He's been all right in the AAA level, but 24 years old now, like you need to start seeing something in the majors, I think. That's been a disappointment. And I don't know if I'm off of him completely, but I've had to take a step back, that's for sure. I don't know what went wrong there.
I'm right there with you, man. I feel like Graham Pauly went from the guy no one gave any credit to, and like he was looking like a sneaky 2020 kind of guy, maybe a 15-15 at worst with decent ratios. I don't know if it was the Padres kind of rushing him or the Marlins not being that good at development, but it's just not happening so far. You never know. Maybe he'll be that 26, 27-year-old breakout, but
Speaking of Marlins player development, I'm surprised no Carter Johnson mentioned for you, Doc. You were kind of rambling about how big of a discount you can get on Marlins hitters when we were doing our kind of first-year player drafts and getting Carter Johnson super late, and he's looking rough. Like, the Marlins with hitters just scare the hell out of me. I think it's probably more of the latter rather than the Padres. I think just like hitters go to the Marlins and, you know, your expectations to their ceiling are just gradually lowered.
yeah, I mean, 19-year-old, I'm not going to write him off, but yeah, certainly it's like, now I'm seeing why I got that 5th round discount in a 30-teamer. It's, hey, you got to hold that value, right? 5th round in a 30-teamer, folks, is deep. And he's 65% to a 69% contact rate this year. Not what you want to see from a guy not giving you much of any juice, but you're correct in that there's a reason the Marlins development gets a discount.
Here's an interesting one while we're on the Marlins. If you had to pick one org to develop a hitter between the White Sox and the Marlins, who are you picking?
White Sox.
All right.
I mean, Caleb Bonnemer looks awesome. Tell me this. Okay, well, Augustin Ramirez, we can't even give them that because he was raised up in New York. Stowers was raised up in Baltimore. So the White Sox are doing pretty good things with Caleb Bonnemer so far. And Colson Montgomery, this is a bad stat, but it's also a good stat for recency. I believe he's the first. Gosh, I gotta find the wording, but he's the first prep shortstop to make the White Sox. Oh gosh, it's a crazy thing. Ross. I'll come back.
You mean drafted and then made it all the way through the minor org? Is that
it's like a really bad stat.
That's a mind-blowing stat. The first shortstop that they've ever drafted to make it all the way through.
I have it. Worse than that. When Colson Montgomery debuts today, it will be the first White Sox first rounder taken out of high school to reach the majors in 30.
Damn. Are you sure you're still taking the White Sox, Doc? I mean, I'm looking at Gavin.
Well, it happened right now. So that.
I mean, that's a really tough question. I'm trying to. It seems like the White Sox have some good stuff going on in the minor leagues right now. Yeah. So it makes me want to lean that direction. But just because they're doing good right now doesn't mean anything, because what we care about is how they do later on, and they've got a pretty poor track record of guys right now. I mean, you got Andrew Vaughn. That's just been a real bummer. I mean, the track record is not good. Yeah, Moncada. I mean, Moncada at least had one really good season in there, at least.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I think I'm also like I'm leaning White Sox too, is like because I'm a lot more encouraged by kind of the newer philosophy they seem to have towards drafting, where it's like kind of drafting guys with kind of a standout tool rather than these kind of picks to click that we've seen in the past, or these kind of questionable picks at slot. Like you mentioned Caleb Bonnemer, I really like Sam Antonashi. I think he gives me a lot of Chase Meadroth vibes coming up in their system.
Shout out to Ross.
Yeah, but I would say probably like the promise that we've seen as of late with the White Sox leans me them. But yeah, that track record just scares me. Like even like I know it's like the Rick Hahn era, but yeah, I mean the White Sox player development track record just I mean that's almost like it's almost like a pick your poison.
Yeah, that's a rough one.
You've got a couple that you were wrong about this year, so let's get into those.
Yeah, I'll run through them because we gotta run through these. But Michael Bush, I didn't really have an anti-Bush stance, but I didn't pursue him anywhere. I just figured that K rate and the low bat speed wouldn't be a great combo, but turns out he reduced his K rate significantly this year. At age 27, seems incredibly possible. This is who he is, and having a guy like PCA playing out of his shoes in front of him, it's like, okay, let's that's gonna work, I guess. I don't know if he's this good, but he's gonna be pretty good. I liked his profile the whole way up, but I just didn't see this coming. He's at now, and Mark Vientos. Goodness gracious, I think we all thought that there was something here. I know there were some folks who were concerned. Here's the problem. People were concerned about one thing: his strikeout rate. That's not even the issue. If you look at his profile, he became basically Caleb Durbin without anything good. Like he became like all the like Durbin's like doesn't strike out, he doesn't whiff, he's got some really good strengths to his metrics. Vientos has no metrics right now. The metrics are all bad. He hits the ball hard occasionally, but it's right now it seems like early on he was trying to take some walks to reduce that strikeout rate, and I just don't know. It makes me wonder if something really physically is wrong with him, or if someone is bumbling something, or he's hurt. That's it. It's the only thing that makes sense, because he hit the ball really hard his entire career, and now he's not. That's the big thing. If Mark Vientos as a third baseman is not hitting the ball hard, we have a problem. That 90.5 average velocity is fine, but good. Just go to the Savant page. It's ice blue. I still actually think it's a good buy. I think he's going to get out of this, but it's certainly not what I saw coming.
Yeah. While we're on the Vientos topic, does this remind you of a potential Spencer Torkelson trajectory?
It's not that bad yet. Like he's like been okay. Like he's been like, it's not we're not at like 130 batting average, but a couple more offers like this, it's going to feel that way.
Yeah.
I mean,
I like
Torkelson. I actually like that comp. I do see that quite a bit. And I do think, I think he's a good buy as well. So I'm with you guys on that.
Yeah, because Torque is a similar profile. Like if Torque isn't hitting you 30 home runs, that's a relatively underwhelming fantasy player. Like he's not going to have a great average. He's not going to have a great on-base percentage. He doesn't steal bases, So I think Vientos is kind of like, I was kind of still in on Torque, even kind of buying that dip, like when a lot of people were completely writing him off after last year. So I think that kind of, I'll probably be in that same boat on Mark Vientos too.
Yeah, I mean, actually, great comp. I really like that. I think he could have a similar sort of. The thing with guys like with Vientos, I probably wouldn't have touched him last year. I think he's an interesting player, but if he with his plate approach, like if you are not making the right kind of contact, you're not very helpful. And so these guys tend to be a little bit more streaky. At least that's my I don't know, hunch on the whole thing about what's going on with him. I think there's some bad luck involved here. I think the truth with Vientos is probably somewhere between what he was doing last year and what he's doing now.
Getting into our dynasty buys, and my first one that I have here is Drake Baldwin with the Atlanta Braves. And I think there's presently there's a lot of questions right now about, he's kind of in a playing time split with Sean Murphy. I think that there's a realistic chance that problem will work itself out, whether it's Murphy gets traded or, Ozuna, who's an impending free agent, gets dealt if the Braves sell. So Drake Baldwin, and I think really he's been super encouraging from a rookie. Expected weighted OBA, XBA, XSlug, average exit velo, barrel, hard hit, a whiff, K rate, walk rate, all really encouraging. So I think Drake Baldwin is somebody who could be a top 6 to 8 dynasty catcher. And I think presently can be acquired for a little bit less than that, given just kind of the playing time situation right now. So he's my first dynasty buy. And my second one, Doc, this is a name that you mentioned earlier, and that's Michael Busch. The quality of contact has improved a lot. We've seen the strikeout rates cut down. We know he's got some big time power. I think realistically going into next season, this could be a top 75 overall pick in drafts. And I don't really think that his dynasty value, whether it be for lack of track record or kind of lack of name value, has kind of caught up to that quite yet. Even with how he's performing this season, and especially as of late, I think there is a narrow, albeit closing, kind of buy lowish window on Michael Busch right now. So those are my two dynasty buys.
I love it. Yeah. No, Busch we talked plenty about, but Drake Baldwin, it still feels like no one's really buying in. Again, I hate to be a savant head, but it's not that far off what he's actually doing. Average is just real average. 56 OBP is just real OBP. 10 home runs is real home runs. And less than 200 ABs. He's the future.
And Doc, you've got a couple as well for us.
Sure,
that I don't find as popular. Yeah, let's get into them.
Caleb Durbin. Hope you've all had a happy Independence Day. Happy Independence Day. Independence Day?
That doesn't work.
Happy Independence Day. It actually does work. You can say it like that. Happy Caleb Independence. Okay, we're going to stop, folks. We got to end the podcast. It's over. He's a top 100 player over the last month. He's actually top 60 depending on your format. For the last couple of weeks, he's like a top 20. He's crushing it. And frankly, it's going to come down to if you keep stealing bases. He had couple the other night. If he can get over 30 stolen bases with a 270 average and a 350 OBP, that's a heck of a player. Runs and RBIs are really solid. We'll see. Is he clutch enough to just grind out these RBIs? Maybe. The runs seem to be a real feature, not a glitch. So if you can get up to like the 90 runs kind of area, whoo! Like, gosh, it's such a cool story, man. This guy's like 5'5", 185. What a freak. What a weird guy. He just swings at everything. His contact rate's like 93%. But go out and buy him. Cole Drake, short story is no one knows who he is because he's from Appalachia in Tennessee, and then he went over to Arkansas, Russellville, where I blew a tire out once. Had to go wait for 4 hours at a Walmart. It sucked. But Cole Drake is 6'5", 230, I think. And he's just been, this underdog story his whole career. He's the next guy up for the Rangers. It's not Mitch Bratt. It's not that other guy whose name I can't pronounce. Dividalio? I forget his name, but you know who he is. There we go. And it's not those guys. It's Cole Drake. So if Rocker or Leiter falter, or if there's more injuries, God forbid, on the Rangers rotation, Cole Drake's making his MLB debut in 2025. I would bet on it, actually.
I like that. One.
Okay, I've got two on here. Cole Reagans, I think, is a pretty obvious one. Elite pitcher. You don't get your chance to get these guys very often. I think right now is the best shot you're going to have in a long time. Probably going to be a guy that leads the league in strikeouts multiple times. So I would be buying that. My second guy is Wyatt Langford. Same reason. You don't get your chance to buy a superstar very often. I think that there is a little, especially judging based on social posts, it seems like there's a little Wyatt Langford exhaustion. People are starting to move on. They're starting to think that what we're seeing now and what we saw last year, combine the two, is just how he is. And I'm telling you, there's another gear. So those are my two.
And of course, once he starts lighting it up again, everyone's gonna be like, that was an easy call. Everyone knew he was gonna be amazing. That's right. A weird guy.
Yeah. And not everyone are players we're buying. So we've also got a couple dynasty sells from each of us. Ross, you want to kick us off again with a couple players that you are selling right now in dynasty?
Yeah. And I'm not selling either of these guys because I don't believe in what they're doing right now. I'm selling them because this is your best chance in dynasty to move these guys off of your team and get some value in return before they're basically not worth anything. And that's Carlos Rodon. I picked him up going back a couple of years ago in a few leagues, and I've held on to him. I really like him. I think he's a guy that went through a couple of years of struggles. There was some injury in there, and looks like he's returned to form this year. I call it returning to form, but he's having almost like a career type of year right now. But high strikeout rate, I think he is one of the all-time leaders in Ks per nine, which is wild. We got a bunch of modern guys that are at the top of that list, but he's pretty close up there. So he's a guy I'd be looking to move, 32 years old right now. He probably gives you a couple more years, but this is probably your best chance to sell high on him. Eugenio Suarez is my second guy. I believe he's Eugenio. Is that how you call him?
Little Eugene.
Little Eugene. I think he's 35. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, right? And I just think right now he's been playing
a little younger than that.
He's been playing incredible.
32, 33, I want to say.
33. Okay, wow, that was way off. He's 33 years old. I think it's time to move him. So, I mean, he's playing really well. It's just the time. If you want to get value back, you got to be willing to move these guys when they're performing before they age out, essentially.
Yeah, and I think like his profile too, especially with he's never been a good hitter for average, high strikeout hitter. That's a profile that is not going to really age well over time, because I think eventually is going to get to a point where he's not a 30 home run bat anymore, and then kind of the rest of that profile just doesn't really interest me all that much. And then Doc, you've got a couple. This first one is probably going to be pretty unpopular, but get into him.
I mean, Pete Crow Armstrong has the worst chase rate in the league. He doesn't take a walk. I'm not really that concerned with the general strikeout rate. It's just the profile under it. And that doesn't mean he's bad. Obviously, there's incredible skill. He's already logging literally his stats as of right now, or 23 home runs, 26 stolen bases. But here's the deal. He's playing out of his shoes in terms of this is a peak performance level, right? He's peak performance, and he's got a 308 OBP. And I've said it before to people, and I say, well, what happens when he goes through a little slump? And even Matt Morris, my co-host on Dynasty Dingers, is like, well, his slumps aren't that bad. I'm like, we don't know what his slumps are. He's 23. You don't know. There's a lot of season left. If he goes cold for a month, this OBP could go to 280s, pretty easily. And that's a trade-off you have to consider in some leagues. I think that that in average leagues, no panic. You're good. In terms of, but if you're in an OBP league, you might have a weird situation where it's basically like peak Adolis Garcia, but better maybe. I don't know. If this guy can be 30-30 for you, I don't know if you necessarily care in any format what he's doing to your OBP, but still, I think like if you have someone where you could sell Pete Crow Armstrong for, maybe you can sell Pete Crow Armstrong to a Cubs fan at the right moment for Bobby Witt Jr. Bobby Witt was a little cold, like for Bobby Witt 5 seconds ago. That's drying up really fast. But like, I don't know, like if you can get someone who's even better than if you can get Ohtani and you're in a competitive window, probably do that. It's like there's some situations where PCA, he's probably a top 10 asset in average leagues for sure. I don't exactly know where to put him in OBP formats because it's weird.
Yeah.
The interesting thing there is the profile is not all that different than a young Bobby Witt. Say?
No, I would say that it's pretty different in that, this is the same profile we've been seeing for PCA for a long time now. He just refuses to. He's so incredibly aggressive. I want to just take a look just to verify. Yeah, so I'm looking at Bobby Witt's rookie season. 16th percentile chase rate, not great. Next season, 35. The 35th percentile. And, he's still not amazing with his chase rate, but it's not like unbelievably bad. Sorry, Louis. Sorry, I was on Bobby. Was that all PCA? No, there we go. But yeah, his OBP in 2023 was 319. Then it was 389. Now it's 346.
Here's an interesting one for you guys. From assuming you're trading for one from a dynasty value perspective, would you rather buy Pete Crow Armstrong at current price or Ceddanne Rafaela? Both high chase, power speed, bats, low OBP.
Cost you a lot less to get Ceddanne.
If you have to pick one right now, just from a value, you're trading for one. Who are you trading for at cost?
PCA.
You're trading for PCA at cost. I mean, I don't play in enough average leagues, so for OBP leagues, it would easily be Ceddanne. I'd pay that value.
Yeah. I'm with Doc on this one, and because we're like they're both virtually the same age, both really bottom 2 percentile in chase, both don't take walks, both like have some good power. PCA a little bit better barrel and hard hit rate than Rafaela right now. Both elite defenders, really good runners. I think with PCA, I don't think if you're buying PCA right now, you're getting him for anything less than around 1 or 2 talent. I think with Rafaela right now, I think you're looking at, is this somebody who is a top 200 overall dynasty asset right now? And I think the answer to that question is no. And I think looking at him last year, he was almost a 15-20 guy. Is this somebody who in the future can be a 20-30 guy? I think that's very possible. I think I think the cost difference is what makes me lean Rafaela. But I'm not really aggressively selling PCA.
I like the logic, but I'm really not looking to acquire players that I don't think are going to be star level performers, and I'm just not there with Rafaela. Well, I wouldn't be buying a player like that.
Yeah, I think it's fair though, because if you look at PCA entering the season, would you say you saw superstar potential in PCA entering this season?
Well, I mean, we evaluated him a lot as a prospect coming up, and that was another one of those guys that I was just listening to on our top 30 outfield prospects from 2 years ago, I think. And I mean, we were very flattering of him. We were big fans of PCA coming up. So yeah, I do think that we saw that coming. Rafaela, STS was never really that high on because it likes the guys that can take a walk. And PCA, while he doesn't do that as much, he's always done it at a higher level than Rafaela, who coming up was just never walking.
But you might have to pay like a BWJ for him now. I'm not paying Bobby Witt.
Here's the interesting one so both in the majors this year, Rafaela 24, PCA 23. PCA is running a 4.4 walk rate and a bottom first percentile chase rate, 44% chase rate, 4.4 walk rate. On Rafaela, he has a 42.4 chase rate and a 4.8% walk rate. So I think that like Rafaela coming up in his rookie year, he had the plate discipline of a 16-year-old in the DSL. But I think now, I don't really think from a walk perspective and a chase perspective, they're all that different. And I think I might presently give the edge to Rafaela right now.
I mean, I see it quite differently. I mean, PCA is still a year younger. For me, apples to apples, we'll have to see what he's doing next year. But honestly, the way that I see it is if I'm not acquiring somebody that I think is going to be a difference maker on my team, then I'm not going to bother. So I'm not going to go with Rafaela because I don't think he can be a difference maker. I don't think he's going to be. He can be. I don't think he's going to be. Yeah, I think can be. So for me, that's the way I would go. Now, all that said, I agree with Doc as he's a potential sell high candidate because his value right now is so extremely high, and you could get so much for him.
It's Ohtani BWJ. Like, he's in the top elite, the best players in baseball. If you can get any of those other guys, I'm taking them.
Yeah, I think Witt is a little bit of a steep comp right now, but
he's got 11 home runs and 24 stolen bases versus this like absurd number. So a lot of guys they're in. What have you done for me right now? And so like it's crazy.
Well,
I don't agree with it, but that's how they're seeing things.
I'm looking at it more from like a competitive dynasty league standpoint of like, yeah, there in some like, you know, more casual leagues, there'll be some recency bias in favor of PCA. But I think to be a bit more conservative, I think that, you know, PCA, I think you can trade him 1-for-1 for a James Wood or Juan Soto right now. So back end top 10 dynasty asset.
We got a couple more names here, don't we?
Yeah, no, you've got one more sell to get into.
I'm not going to get into it because I'll just run by it because we went by him earlier. Hunter Goodman. Man, more like Hunter Badman.
He's a bad man.
Well, I mean, you know, you can view that a few different ways. Yeah, he's been a bad man. We already talked about him, so I won't drill it too hard because he's like an underdog story. You know, PCA, he was always a prospect I wasn't really like too fond of for his profile. I'll give him credit. He's obviously better than I thought he was, but I think we got to bring it back. Hunter Goodman, I almost hate bringing him up, but people get really defensive. When I say sell PCA and sell Hunter Goodman, I get more hate over Goodman. I think because everyone's like, I found my guy, my diamond in the rough. And I'm like, it's almost certainly not going to work out. Whereas like Cal Riley, you're like, this guy's a freaking weird guy, but he's always actually secretly taking walks. Goodman's not that guy. So I do think the floor is going to come out. It's going to be a rough second half. Hope not. Hope he works out.
Yeah. So my first sell is Mookie Betts. And like, this is more just plain and simple. I don't think he's a first round fantasy talent anymore. Like, granted, he has had some bad luck under the hood this year. He's hitting 247 with a 264 XBA. The power metrics are really what's discouraging me. The average exit velo, 88.3. That's 25th percentile. Barrel rate, 5.7. That's 24th. Hard hit, 34.3. That's 18th. And the bat speed, 68.7. A little bit down from last year. That's bottom 10th percentile. I think there is still a chance somebody will buy low on Mookie Betts right now, think that they can still get another season or two for a first-round talent. If they want to, be my guest. That I think right now, I think Mookie's name value is a lot higher than what the value is going to be going forward. So for that reason, he is somebody that I'm selling right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd be looking to buy on Mookie Betts based on his numbers right now. I think there's going to be some positive regression. I don't think he's a first-round talent. Like, to your point, I agree with you. But to quote the A's, I'm not, I wouldn't be paying prices for what I think Mookie Betts could be going forward. I'm paying for prices of the player that he is right now.
Yeah, and granted, like, there's some encouraging signs with Betts. Like, the ratios are still really good, which, that potentially gives you some kind of floor as to how he's going to age. We're looking at a guy who hit 39 home runs in, 2023. No,
that's
I don't
gone.
think,
That's done.
Yeah, I don't think this is somebody who's going to hit 30 home runs going forward, or at least, on a consistent year-over-year basis. So I think if you have somebody who still thinks he can be a 30-100 guy, home runs, RBIs, and they will buy him at a late first price, and I think that's a realistic sell right now for Betts. I think it's more, I would lean on just kind of taking that name value rather than kind of what I think he's going to be going forward. I think like Trey Turner is an interesting comp for what we could see Betts's ADP value going forward. Like from a cost perspective is what I'm saying. Is like Trey was a late second, like not far above a Jazz Chisholm type going into this year. He's having a really good year, but I think there's some rightful concern about how that kind of speed first profile is going to age going forward. I think with Mookie, it's a little different. I don't think, this is somebody who's going to, continue to produce the home run outlook that he has in the past. So he's somebody that I'm selling. And my second name on here, this is somebody that I was fading entering the season, is Emmanuel Clase. Plain and simple, I just don't. Relievers are far too volatile for me to bank on him getting back to his 2024 performance. He still has a fair amount of name value. I still think this is somebody who can net you top 50 overall value. The strikeout rate has been on a kind of continuous decline for the past few seasons. He's not really the kind of, soft contact inducing, hard contact limiting maestro that he was last season. So, given the volatility of that position and that, I still think there's still some strong name value off his 2024 performance. Emmanuel Clase is somebody that I'm selling right now. I think from a standpoint, I would rather Mason Miller plus than an Emmanuel Clase.
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't really have too many opinions on Clase. I mean, I agree with you that closing is volatile, and that's part of. I actually am doing a hype piece on, well, not a hype piece, but I'm doing a little profile of players who could be an impact in 2025, prospects who could be an impact. And Tyson Neighbors, I'm like, yeah, Robert Suarez does have a nice contract and is crazy good right now, but you just never know when the bottom falls out. And so give me the stuff. But what I would say about Mookie Betts, just real quick, is that bat speed is horrible. I think it's lower than Caleb Durbin's bat speed, which is not great. And so we have a player who I think is going to adjust and be a serviceable, really solid player, but he hasn't been fast since 2020. His bat speed's been declining the last couple of years with. Wilson Contreras at the beginning of the year, people were freaking out. I said, nah, and Goldschmidt even, he's struggling lately, but I'm like, the bat speeds, they're actually increasing. One of them, I forget which one, was actually getting higher bat speeds than before. I'm like, no, whatever's going on is not age related. Mookie Betts is injury and age related. The power days are done. Like maybe the highest you're going to see for the rest of his career is maybe 25, because he's so good at squaring up the ball. It can still happen. And the counting stats might be there in that lineup. But the Mookie Betts, if you can sell them, like you said, I agree. If you can sell them on 2023 value right now or even last year's value, go for it.
Yeah, I think here's another interesting one back to Clase is, Felix Bautista's he's officially shaken off that Tommy John rust, in my opinion, over his last few. Can you get maybe Felix Bautista, who in a tier behind Clase, and then maybe another top 75 overall dynasty asset right now, plus maybe a prospect for Emmanuel Clase? And I think you can. And I think like a healthy Bautista and a healthy Clase, that is a lot closer to me than I think really from a value standpoint, a lot of people would think right now. So I think there's a lot of ways that there's a couple relievers that, I would kind of take just from a cost perspective, balanced with kind of a performance perspective. I want kind of high strikeouts, good ratios guys from my closers. That's not Clase. So I think there's a few names you could put out there that I think that you could kind of consolidate Clase into a few pieces with a Bautista or a Miller, and then maybe I'm trying to think of some good names to maybe someone who like the market may not have caught up with yet, maybe like a Heliot Ramos type. Plus a prospect or two. I think that would interest me a lot more than holding Clase and banking on him replicating or coming close to 2024.
I don't have strong opinions on that. I mean, I think you want to get the elite level closers because I think they're a slightly different conversation than most relievers, where you're on a carousel. Flip side of that is Clase has never really been my type of closer, just because
I agree.
While he's very effective, he's not putting up elite strikeout rates. That's what I want from my closers. I want him to get those counting stats for me too.
I think with Clase, the problem with his profile is like if he's not what we're seeing with 2024 with his ability to limit hard contact and induce soft contact, he's not somebody who's going to, in my opinion, replicate a sub-3 ERA he's just not that dominant level of closer just from a stuff perspective. Velo, yes, but the rest of it, no.
Yeah, going back a few years ago, I traded Clase, I think straight up, or maybe I added something else in there for Josh Hader. So that was the kind of deal I was looking for. And, I'm probably going to do that kind of a deal. If I could get a Mason Miller for Clase, absolutely.
Yeah, I think Hader's another really good example. I think you can do, I think Bautista and Miller are maybe even a bit higher from a dynasty perspective than Hader right now. And I think if you can get Hader plus, a solid piece for your lineup or rotation plus a prospect or two for Clase right now, I would hit accept on that. Not think twice.
Yep, agreed.
And that is all for our kind of mid-season fantasy recap. I'm Owen Hurd. You can find me on X at @Owen_fantasy baseball. FBB Ross, you can find him at Ross Jensen 12. And our guest, Doc Eisenhauer at Doc Eisenhauer on X. Check out his Sunday Smoke articles on Prospects Live. Doc, thank you all for joining us, and thank you all for tuning in. We will see you all next time.
Thanks, guys.